Hello, Modern World History. Welcome to your first lecture through YouTube. Now, understand the nice things about this is you can pause, you can make my voice go faster, you can make it go slower, maybe. But this is for you. You should be keeping notes. You should be writing down any questions you might have, words that you are confused about, events, people you'd like to know more about, and getting those comments to me, either when we have class, via email, or comments if you can put them in the YouTube. Okay, and so this in your notes, one was what is government, two was the Enlightenment thinkers, both done in class, and now three, the American Revolution. And this is going to be the first time we're going to use those Enlightenment thinkers' ideas of what is a government and what makes an effective government, and can you get rid of a government to use. And we're going to create one of the first democracies, modern day democracies, besides Greece and Rome, in the world. Okay, and so let's look at causes of the American Revolutionary War. The first, we have to understand that Britain had controlled the American colonies for many years, over 150 years, right? Yeah, right. Over 150 years when the American Revolutionary War happened, since 1607, and there was 13 of them, and they were all formed for various reasons. And Britain had taken this mostly hands-off approach. Sometimes you'll hear it referenced as salutary neglect. Now, this hands-on approach allowed the colonists to create their own governments. Efficiently, they ran themselves. They raised their own taxes, they had their own laws, they had their own judicial system, they made laws, enforced laws, reviewed laws in their own ways, and each colony was unique. For instance, in Virginia, you had the House of Burgesses. In New England, you started with the Mayflower Compact. You get more town hall meetings based on religion, what they call theocracy. But all the colonies got to rule themselves. And they also were able to make economic decisions, meaning Britain wasn't taxing them at this time. Now, after fighting a series of wars, and at the end, which was the French Indian War, or worldwide, it was called the 7 Years' War, ending in 1763, Britain tightened their control over the colonies because they were in a lot of debt and they needed money. And so they looked to control the colonies to increase their revenue. Now, you can see here the original 13 colonies, each very distinct. Each was independent. They weren't very united. And so as the French Indian War ended, these colonies started to talk to each other. They became more unified. And once Britain started to control them, they started to create an identity and start thinking about, well, why is Britain doing this? And should they be able to? Now, we're going to talk about the causes, specific causes, and this might be reviewed from your 8th grade U.S. history class, if you remember. And one of the first things we need to talk about is to gain revenue, Britain started passing taxes. And throughout history, one thing you need to know about revolutions, if you don't want a revolution government, don't mess with people's money or their stomachs. Don't take away their food. Okay, they get very hangry. All right, and so Britain started passing laws that increased taxes. The most famous were the Stamp Act, which actually gave a tax on all colonists because it was on all paper products, and then also the Tea Act. We know that one the best because the Boston Tea Party came afterwards. Now, many colonists felt that Britain had no right to do this, that they had it taxed for over 150 years, and now all of a sudden they started to. And there became a slogan, no taxation without representation, meaning the people wanted to give their consent to Britain to tax them, and they weren't having a voice. And so this is based on those ideas of those Enlightenment thinkers that the people should give consent to the government so that they can be governed and to protect those natural rights. And so in 1776, so it built up from 1763 to 1776 with numerous acts, reactions by the colonists, reactions by the British government. Finally, it boiled over over the pot, you would say, to the Declaration of Independence from the Second Continental Congress in 1776. And we get this famous document, which we'll be looking at in class, the greatest breakup letter of all time. Now, the goals of the American Revolution, and let's move my face, okay, the goals of the American Revolution were threefold. One, gain independence from Britain. You should understand that throughout the world, no nation had ever gained independence from another nation. Okay? This was a new thing. Two, create a new democratic government. Okay? This was also going to be very new to the world. A democratic government not seen since Greece and Rome back in the ancient days, and so this is going to be the great experiment. And number three, they also wanted to establish equal rights for all citizens. Now, I underline citizens because that is not everyone in the United States at this time, okay, as that we became a country. And you need to recognize this. And this is one of the things that is kind of a black eye in American history, is this idea that not all those living in the United States were seen as equal. Now, the results of the American Revolution, we have the goals and the results line up pretty well. 1783, we gained our independence from Britain. They gave us all the North American land. Okay, so we take that over besides Canada all the way down to the border of Florida because that was part of Spain at the time to the Mississippi from the Atlantic. Although the Constitution was created in 1789, it's not necessarily our first government. The Articles of Confederation were. It took a big L, and so we created the Constitution, which will be even more democratic and use some more of those Enlightenment thinkers' ideas. And lastly, within that, our first 10 amendments to get that ratified were called the Bill of Rights, giving citizens certain rights, individual rights, and protecting them from power. Now, what the American Revolution did, it gave us our first democratic country, our first experiment with democracy. And it also showed that if people didn't like their government, they could overthrow it. And we're going to see our next example in the French Revolution not go so well. Until next time, see you in class.